Okay, so I'd like to welcome everybody to this Family for Every Child online event on kinship care in Brazil, and a very warm welcome to our special guests for this webinar. We have Ana Angelica Campello, Jonathan Hane and Claudia Cabral, whose presentations you will have watched in advance of joining us today. We're using Zoom webinar today, and my colleague Jessica is online in case you have any problems using the technology. We're not using videos today to ensure everybody can participate fully, even if their internet is slow. Also, only the microphones of the presenters are on, so you'll need to type your questions when we start the question and answer session. But before I introduce our panelists in full, I wanted to invite our Head of Alliance Programs, Andres Gomez de la Torre, to say a little bit about Family for Every Child. If he can.
Okay, great. I think you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome to everyone. Just very brief words for those of you who are not aware. Family for Every Child has been working for a few years now to grow as an alliance, a global alliance of local organizations working across all continents, with particular expertise on preventing family separation, strengthening families, and ensuring high quality alternative care when needed. That's really what brings a big, large group of local organizations together, their expertise in one or more of the areas I just described. So we are a growing alliance. We are learning from the experience of our own members, and a key part of what we do is to share that expertise among members, from countries to other countries, from regions to regions, in order to strengthen the way we operate. So that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have later on, but to welcome everyone again. And this is just one of those key events we try to host in order to promote the sharing of that expertise by listening to practitioners who have experience in the particular area. Welcome.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Andres. So to introduce our distinguished speakers for this event, we have Ana Angelica Campello. She currently works in Brazil's Ministry of Citizenship, where she's part of the team that's discussing the standardization of kinship care in Brazil. She's got over 20 years of experience in social policy, including as a consultant for the National Council on Child Rights, and for federal district state government as director of the Social Development Secretariat. And she's also implemented foster care services. She's currently a member of the Social Welfare National Secretariat, which is responsible for legislation and policies around children's rights to family and community life. We're also joined by Jonathan Hane, who's got also decades of experience working with children, young people, and also in individual and community development. He's currently advising the Brazilian federal government to develop a national formal kinship care program, and is also working with several other municipalities that are implementing their own kinship care programs. In 2012, he received honorary citizenship of Diadema in Brazil, and the British honour of an MBE in recognition of his work in Brazil. And Claudia Cabral. She's got a degree in psychology, a master's degree in education, and specialisation in family therapy. Her career has focused on psychology of children and adolescents who are separated from their families or in the process of separating from family life. She's consulted on projects at national and international level and collaborated on drafting the UN guidelines for alternative care. So I think that so I want to thank you all for your very interesting presentations, which I think provided a strong case for how to structure the social welfare system so that it can support different types of kinship care arrangements, as well as what specific services higher risk families can benefit from, so that cycles of violence that result in family separation aren't repeated. But also, I think the presentation showed the importance of prioritising support to kinship care as part of care reform and deinstitutionalisation efforts. And this is all very important in our work, We know that the majority of children who are not living with their parents are in kinship care, and children often prefer kinship care to other forms of care when they're consulted about it. Yet children living with more distant relatives and family friends are often more vulnerable to abuse, neglect and violence, and they're therefore in need of support. We've got some awareness of what this support, that this support should be provided in ways that doesn't push away caregivers or overburden social work systems. And I think that these presentations all give a lot of insight into those considerations. So I'd like to now open the question and answer session by inviting you to share any questions that you have. Please use the question and answer box rather than the chat box, as it's easier for us to keep track of your questions that way and make sure we've responded to them. Please also say if your question is for Ana Angelica, Jonathan, Claudia, or if it's for the whole group. Ana Angelica has an interpreter with her in the room, so if it's not immediately clear who the question is directed to, we might take a few moments to assign it to someone. So I'll start by sharing a few questions to get us started. The first one's for Ana Angelica, so you'll hear both her and her interpreter speaking. So Ana Angelica, could you describe the next steps for the development of law, policy and regulation in this area? So picking up on what you shared already about progress so far. I think she's just coming off mute and probably catching up with the interpreting. Maybe we'll move on to Jonathan just quickly while Ana Angelica catches up. So Jonathan, a question for you, if that's okay.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. So can you tell us a bit more about what the therapeutic aspects of your individual, family and group work look like?
Yes, so I'd say the
I think Jonathan was having a bit of a problem with his internet connection earlier, so he might be able to come in again later, or if not, put something in the chat box. So I'll move back to Ana Angelica, and if not, we can move to Claudia. So Ana Angelica, can you hear us now? Can you speak now? Okay, great. So I'll read the question out to you again. So could you describe the next steps for the development of law, policy and regulations in this area? Oh, I'm struggling there. Okay, so I'm going to move to our third. It's good we've got three presenters really. So Claudia, if you can also come off mute and be able to respond to this question. So can you tell us what the results of the National Advocacy Network that you describe in your presentation, what the results were or have been, and what you think were the secrets to achieving these successes?
Yes, Camila, can you hear me?
Very well. Please go ahead.
So, yes, let's wait for the other panelists while I now can contribute to the discussions with you. Yes, I presented the work we have done in Brazil to raise a network. And in this network, we were talking, I think everybody saw the presentation, we were talking about all the kind of reintegrations and considering the whole family and the kinship care. And with all the work we have done, I could say that since 2003 till to now, 2018, we have less 50% of the children living in institutional care. And within these 50 children less, we have now foster care that we didn't have at the moment. So at that moment, on the first research, there were 20,000 children in institutional care, with 20% of this sample, I could say. And today, we have 45,000 children out of the family. And this is not a sample, but a census, 100% in Brazil. Nowadays, we have less than 30 children within each shelter. And at that moment, we used to have 150 children in shelters. We have a very big network doing a strong advocacy and capacity building all over Brazil. And in terms of kinship care, I could say that all this network in Brazil is not small. Everybody knows what's the genogram nowadays. Everybody knows that they cannot consider only father and mother, but they know that they need to look for the extended family and the power we can have within a family to place children with relatives. Just the challenges are the how to do. And on this how to do, we are still working on.
Fantastic. And do you want to say a little bit about what you think were some of the, what was the key really to some of the successes that you've made? Because I know other countries will be struggling significantly still with achieving some of the outcomes that you've just mentioned.
Our approach, we had a partnership with UNICEF and the government as an NGO. So we were all together, and then we invited government and civil society together from each state of Brazil. So the partnership between the government and the civil society began in each meeting we were together. And we think that the most important thing is always to have discussions based on scientific proofs. I don't know if everybody understands my English, but we need to have minimum common scientific approaches, as know the minimum approaches of the psychology of relationships, the systemic approach of the family group, have an anthropological view. And so having this conceptual scientific alignment, I could say, we can convince those who only thinks on the child and wants to save the child and culpabilize, I don't know how to say, but blame with father and mother, and don't consider the whole relationships that a child can have. So this scientific approach is very important for us, and to bring good technical leaders from the government. We need to find good technical and scientific, and those who knows how to do, that will be the leaders that will work with us to go all over the country and to spread values and beliefs and how to do.
Great, thank you. I think that's very clear for me, and if not, if people want to ask further, they can do so in the chat box. So we've got quite a few questions coming in the chat box, which is great. So I'm going to return to Ana Angelica to answer the question I previously asked, and then we'll move on to the first question that's been asked from Leticia Rodriguez. So Ana Angelica, are you able to contribute now? Just before I move to you. She was able to contribute in our practice session, so hopefully. Okay, I'm going to try Jonathan again.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes. Please feel free. Do you want me to read the question again? Let me read it again for the participants. So, individual, family, and group work look like?
Yeah, so we're talking about the therapeutic approach. I think it's important to say that we're not looking at working with all children who are in kinship care. And so the context of the child's living with extended family members is very important. As Claudia commented in her previous, what she was just saying, the use of a genogram, a historical genogram, is very important for us to identify all of the forces and factors that have come together, causing a child not to be with their parents anymore. And this will inform the way in which we will start to work. The other thing which is very important is to understand how the child and their extended family are integrated or not into their local community and also with other family members. With this, then we can look to work with a highly trained caseworker who is not necessarily highly university trained, but has received a lot of capacity building. We look at the work will look at all of this together with the guardian, the person responsible for the children, and start to develop action plans to modify that have led to destructive patterns within the family.
Okay. Well, while we have your connection strong, I'm just going to add another question from one of the participants, which is from, I think, Manuel, which reads, how do you choose or how do you know the children or the family who are in need of help? How do these children come to your organisation? That one was for Jonathan.
So, within the Brazilian social welfare system, there are, for children who suffer violence, neglect, and abuse, they come into the system to be worked with by something called the Center of Reference for Special Social Protection. The government.
Well, I think we've lost Jonathan again.
The program.
Say that again, Jonathan.
Sorry, from the beginning or from the middle?
From the middle.
Okay, so children are referred to our organization by the special protection team from the local social services, considering that there also has to be
Oh, we've lost you again. After considering there has to be. Okay, so let me have a look here at some of the other questions that come up from the participants. We've got Ana Angelica rejoining, I believe, so that she can hear us, because since we launched the event rather than the practice session, she hasn't been able to contribute. So yes, so I think most of the other questions have come in for either Ana Angelica or Jonathan, but I don't know, Claudia, if and Ana Angelica's back. So Ana Angelica, can you come off mute and let us know that you can contribute, and then I'll assign a question to you. And Jonathan says he's also back. Do you want to try and pick up again where you left off, Jonathan? I mean, we got the bit that the children are referred to you by the special protection team of the local social services.
Okay. The only other point I was going to make is that within the Brazilian, we also need for there to be a court process for rights protected within the program.
So then there needs to be a court process as part of the child coming into your services? So you broke up a little bit there. Maybe you can, I'll invite him to type that on the chat box when he comes back online. Okay, how about Ana Angelica? Are we able to hear from her? Ah, okay, so we'll read out the questions for Ana Angelica, but I just want to check that she can speak. Oi, Ana Angelica?
Oi.
Hi, okay, I'll read out the questions again. So the first question was, could you describe the next steps for the development of law, policy and regulations in this area?
Você pode descrever quais são os próximos passos para normas e regulações nessa área?
Os próximos passos dizem respeito à discussão sobre como seria uma regulação em relação a esse serviço.
The next steps are regarding the discussions on how a service like that could be established
No Ministério da Cidadania e também no Conselho Nacional de Assistência Social, do qual participam governo e sociedade civil representativa.
Together between the Ministry of Citizenship and also another council which involves both government and so.
Sorry, another council that involves government and... Okay, I think there's an ongoing technology issue there. I don't know if Claudia has some awareness of that point or would like to respond to any of the questions that have come in on the chat box. And then we'll
look. I think Ana Angelica was going to talk about the National Council of Social Service that has civil society and government together. So we have one council with civil society and government together related to the Ministry of Welfare. And we have another council of civil society and government together that's related to the Ministry of Human Rights. And but this is the council only for everything that has to do with human rights for children and adolescents, what we say. So all these discussions to write a policy comes also within this council, this council. So that means that we have always civil society bodies within the government that are legitimated, I could say, to participate and contribute to the discussion. This is how Brazil is organized. As I know, and if Jonathan can get into too, and Ana, we from ABTH have been invited to be on the first discussions about this new, it's not a law, but it's an internal policy from the Ministry of Welfare to write the detailed process on kinship care. We, the Ministry of Welfare, they write a lot of different policies, detail the how to do. For example, they say that this technical orientations. So they have very deeply technical orientations about institutional care, what with the shelters and home living. They have very detailed methodologies and process that they call the policy that needs to be obeyed everywhere in the welfare system about foster care. And now they are writing about kinship. And there is a big discussion on it in terms of terminology, in terms of the, how can I say, the money? No, it's not that we give to each family. It's not money, sorry.
The social grant.
The grant.
Yeah.
Yes, the grant, the social grant, how to use it, because we have the social protection that it's a kind of compensation for all poor people. This is one thing. They don't have any violence within the family, but they achieve a grant. This is one thing. But when there is violence, that will be those who will be selected to be on the kinship care. So there we need a format to formalize the follow-up. It passes by the judges, and we need to decide on this, how to do the detailed process on how long the child will be with the kinship family. Will it have a moment that the child comes back to parents or not? How are you going to use the grant for them not to depend on this grant? How many will be this? Is it a minimum, or is there something more that will give? So all these kind of detailed discussions are now within the ministry, and this is very good, because before we could not imagine that they were able to have very deeply discussions on this kind of contents. Perhaps now they are there. Let's see.
So could you also say when this standardization is completed, will it be used in every state in Brazil? That's a question from Buthaina in Kenya, I believe.
Yes, because every municipality has a secretary of welfare that somehow is related to the national ministry. Often, the national ministry gives an amount to put in place the policy they are designing. So they open an opportunity for each municipality to receive an amount to put in place, for example, this kinship care program, the new kinship program that will be designed. And the local secretariat from the municipality adds another amount and install the program or the service, always related to the national policy within the Ministry of Welfare system.
Okay, great. And then there's another question directly to you, Claudia, from Manuel. Could you compare the social welfare system in Brazil and the relevance of extended families as part of this to other social networks in fully developed countries? So you can, I don't know how much you feel able to respond on that. Any reflections?
From other developed, yes, from other development contexts, I don't know, because I think the social welfare system, they are completely, somehow differently organized in each country. what I could say by the kinship, we could reflect about this anthropological approach. It depends on cultures, the way we see, I think, the kinship care. Here in Brazil, we are from the West, and we are somehow very Latin. And so people are very close to relatives. And this circulation of a child within the extended family is in our history. There exists a lot from a long, long time. Now, the question is how to formalize those who are suffering, those who are being violated within the extended family. And this is something that we don't need to think only about extended family, but also parents. The question is, how can we detect the violence, detect the suffering, and on time work with that to prevent the child to suffer more? I don't know.
Yes, I think
if I was very directly with the question, but
I think that was exactly what they were asking. But just in case it's useful, I would say that just in case they were also asking a bit more about the system, I would say that from what I know of kinship care in different developed countries, there's perhaps not such an organised approach to prioritising those children that are at higher risk. You know, and it seems like in Brazil, this kind of approach of kind of prioritising a response to children of higher risk, or children who are coming out of institutional care, children who are being separated from families, is perhaps being thought through a bit more than it is in some fully developed countries. So I think that's why it makes such an interesting case study. Okay, so Ana Angelica, I think, is back. So Ana Angelica, can you come off mute and we can? Hi. Okay, fantastic. So would you like to try again to answer that first question, and then we have a few other questions from the participants for you.
Pedindo para você repetir, para você responder a mesma pergunta de novo. Eu vou pedir para ela repetir a pergunta. Okay, can you repeat the question then, please?
Sure, yeah. So could you describe the next steps for the development of law, policy and regulations in this area?
Para regulamentar nacionalmente o Kinship Care, vamos agora discutir os seus parâmetros no âmbito do Ministério da Cidadania e do Conselho Nacional de Assistência Social.
So in order to implement these regulations, what's going to be done now is that there will be discussions between the Ministry of Citizenship and also the National Council for Social Assistance.
Esse conselho ele é formado por membros do governo e da sociedade civil e regulamenta qualquer novo serviço de assistência social.
And this council is made up by both people from the government and from the civil society. And this council is the one that actually makes up the regulations for this area.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's move on to one of the other questions for you. So how is the transition from kinship care to the bolsa familia grant defined, and who is responsible for it? So I think that's about how kinship families get access to the bolsa familia grant and who's responsible for it.
Uhum. Mesmo durante o período em que a família está no kinship care,
even during the period in which the family is within the kinship care,
ela também deve estar sendo acompanhada pelo CRAS, Centro de Referência de Assistência Social.
This family is still being monitored by the Reference Center for Social Assistance.
As duas equipes se comunicam, do Centro de Referência e do Kinship Care.
And both teams are always in communication with each other, the team from the reference center and the team from the Kinship Care.
Quando a equipe do Kinship Care avalia que a família já está em condições de autonomia, de não precisar mais do programa,
When the Kinship Care team gets an evaluation of that family and finds that the family does not need to be in that cash transfer system anymore, then
se articula com os centros de referência especializados de assistência social ou os centros de referência de assistência social,
it is then connected between specialized social assistance reference centers and just regular social assistance reference centers
para continuar o acompanhamento e inserir no programa Bolsa Família de transferência de renda.
in order to then go on with this monitoring and then get inside the Bolsa Familia cash transfer or not.
Em algumas situações,
In some situations also,
a família já vinha recebendo Bolsa Família além do subsídio do Kinship Care.
the family already was already a participant in the Bolsa Familia cash transfer program, beyond to the cash transfer program of the Kinship Care itself.
Okay, thank you very much. And while we have you, Ana Angelica, can I ask you one more question? Which is, in which cases is there an intervention of the judicial system? And how can the family be out of the judicial system, if it's clear?
No Brasil, sempre que uma criança estiver sob guarda de outra pessoa, que não o pai e a mãe,
In Brazil, always when it happens that a child is under the guardianship of someone other than the father or the mother,
é necessário uma autorização judicial para isso.
it is necessary to have a judicial authorization for that to happen.
Mas o acompanhamento técnico não é feito pelo judiciário, é pelo programa.
However, the technical monitoring of that is not made by the judicial system. It is made by the social assistance system.
No caso, os técnicos do programa, eles mandam relatórios para o judiciário no caso de necessidade de mudança de guarda, ou seja, voltar a guarda dos pais ou, por algum outro motivo, mudar novamente a guarda para outra família ou para uma instituição.
So what happens is that these social workers, they report back to the judicial system, and so that the judicial system can, from those reports, decide whether the guardianship is going to go back to the parents or is going to be changed to someone else.
Qualquer mudança de guarda é feita pelo judiciário.
Any formal guardianship change is made by the judicial system.
Okay, so that's in the case of formal kinship care. I'm answering. Just for the participants to know, I'm answering. I'm selecting their questions as having been answered, but they should feel free to add another question if their question wasn't answered in full. So thank you, Ana Angelica. I'm going to see if we can have Jonathan back to speak, because I've been told that he can contribute now. Is that right?
Okay, mute.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for now.
So I've heard you, but I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Please, that's excellent that we can hear you. You're coming up as Ana Angelica, but that's absolutely fine. So you were just halfway through your response around the need for a court order when how children come into ACE's services. And you mentioned that they're referred by the special protection team of the local social services. And then you were also mentioning something about a court order. Perhaps you can finish that and then I'll ask you a few other questions.
Yes, I think it complements what Ana Angelica has just said, that whilst there is a lot of informal kinship care in Brazil, like in many other countries, once a children's rights have been violated and they come to the attention of the social services. If the child needs to be placed with somebody who is not their parent, then they must be subject to a formal guardianship process. There is no legal way for a child to be with even a family member who is not their parents unless it's court mandated.
Yeah, yeah, okay, that's great. All right, so some questions on your specific model. So how do you choose, or how do you, no, that's the one we just answered. So another question was, who is in charge of the follow-ups? Is it the same team that's doing the therapeutic work? How is this reported and to whom?
Okay, so the program itself, once a child comes in and the family come into the program, all of the work is developed by the caseworker under the supervision of a coordinator. What's important to note is, as we're dealing with a therapeutic model, we are looking to achieve results within 2 to 2.5 years maximum, which would be that the family is guaranteeing the rights of the children day to day, to education, to health, to living in a violence-free home, and that the family by themselves can access all of the services that they might need. So all of the work over these 2 to 2.5 years is done by the caseworker with the coordinator and the rest of the team. And once a family graduates, if, as is often the case, they're still very challenged, impoverished families, as Angelica had mentioned, they will probably continue to receive the bolsa familia, though they wouldn't receive the specific stipend from the program, and be accompanied by the local reference center for social assistance.
Right, right. Okay. Okay, that I think that answers the question. And then there was one more, I think, which is for you, which is, in which way do you concretely work for the family's autonomy?
So when we start working with many of these families, they are not at all integrated into services and so forth. So the manner with which we start is often the caseworker going together with the guardian, the grandmother or the aunt or whatever, to access, so that there's practical learning by the guardians as to how to protect the children, how to work developing the children as well.
Okay, so having them come along together to sessions to get the kinship carers engaged with the program at the beginning.
That's correct. And then over time, through the development of 6 monthly action plans with the guardians, they can slowly develop their autonomy and start identifying services they need, or start identifying actions that they need to do, and start developing them with the support of the caseworker. And it's only once the family member demonstrates that they are able autonomously to do all that is necessary that they then graduate.
Okay, okay. There's going to be a contribution from Claudia on this one, and then we've got a few more questions for everybody. So, Claudia, can you come off mute? Hi.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, Leticia, it's a pleasure to have you here asking all this. I just would like to add that is in our technical approach with the families, what Jonathan is saying, graduate, is the process that for us, the grant is somehow a useful tool. And because when we give the grant, that is a kind of helping for the autonomy, we could say that we ask the families to use this grant, considering that it will end. So the family needs to planify how to use the grant. When the family begins to planify, they begin to think about the past and the future. And think about the past and the future can be also a very important tool for them to think about, where am I in terms of violence, and where do I want to be in terms of violence? Which changes do I want? Not only in terms of the concretely approach of the money, the autonomy, and be able to work and to be independent in terms of the economic side, but also to be independent in terms of the protection living life. I hope you understood.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really useful contribution. Okay, so we've got one more question from the participants, and then unless any more come in, a few more from me, if there's time, or from, you know, the ones we thought would be useful to share. So this is from Busaina. When we are promoting kinship care and foster care, maybe it's an idea that has been welcomed by many. Are there institutions that are not for this noble idea? So I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that one, obviously particularly from the Brazilian perspective, but you might have insights from elsewhere as well. So I think this would be about people particularly who were hostile to kinship or foster care when it was first being promoted. Jonathan, are you off mute?
Yes, yeah. Yes, I am. I would say I can talk about the experience of an organization that implemented kinship care in Brazil in 2009 in one city, and then has worked in other cities since. And I would say that there has been much more pushback than we had expected once we'd shown that our model was an effective and relatively cheap model of care when compared to institutional care and foster care. I would say that some of the pushback was and continues to be through a lack of understanding of what a formal kinship care program looking after children who've suffered abuse and violence, when compared with a traditional social practice of children being looked after within their kinship groups, which is very common and has been historically in Brazil. So I'd say parts of the difficulties have and continue to be about identifying what is different about formal kinship care than from traditional practices. I think also historically children's homes in Brazil were the first form of charitable organization and have been around for hundreds of years. And so there are naturally quite solid feelings that that is just what should be done and what is best for children. And that has also, in my experience, been very present within members of the judiciary who, within the Brazilian context, are a key player in enabling a kinship care program to function.
Okay, great. So, well, not great, but great contributions. So, Ana Angelica or Claudia, did either of you want to answer this question as well? If not, I can share a final question or two from my side. Okay. Looks like Jonathan's covered that one. So, I think it would be interesting to ask Ana Angelica to respond to the question that was asked to Jonathan about his program. Oh,
eu fiquei com essa dúvida em relação à questão.
Ana Angelica is saying that she has a little doubt regarding the question from Botaina.
A questão é se alguns serviços de acolhimento institucional têm resistência quanto a esse tipo de serviço, kinship care e foster care.
The question is whether some institutions have some kind of doubts or problems with kinship care and foster care,
ou se algumas instituições que ofertam foster care e kinship care teriam mais intenções.
Or if institutions that are promoting kinship care and foster care have other interests.
I think it was the first, the former.
Ok.
Acho que foi a primeira coisa que você disse.
Ok. Bom, aqui no Brasil, mesmo foster care ainda é relativamente novo.
Even in Brazil, foster care is still relatively new.
Então, opções novas de acolhimento, principalmente quando está trabalhando com questões de violência em relação à criança e adolescente, deixam muitos atores na dúvida.
So new options when bringing care for children, especially children that have been going through violent situations, is still something that leaves all the stakeholders involved in much doubt regarding all that.
Principalmente quando envolve dinheiro. Há sempre a suspeita nas pessoas que têm medo ou dúvida sobre essas novas formas, se a família não está interessada no bem-estar da criança, mas apenas em receber o dinheiro.
Especially when money is involved, a lot of these stakeholders, they raise questions and doubts whether the families could be, for example, more interested in just receiving the money rather than providing adequate care for the children.
Eu entendo que isso é um pouco de preconceito contra as famílias mais pobres.
So Ana Angelica understands that this is some kind of a prejudice against more impoverished families.
E falta de entendimento que faz parte de um serviço como esse justamente avaliar as motivações e condições da família para prover o cuidado necessário àquela criança.
And a lack of understanding regarding the evaluation of these families and the evaluation of whether they have actual proper conditions to provide adequate care for the children.
E também uma certa cultura da institucionalização.
And also there is a culture of formal institutionalization in the country still. So that is also a challenge.
As pessoas ainda não valorizam muito a questão da convivência familiar como essencial ao bom desenvolvimento da criança.
It is still not very highly valuable. People don't give the proper value to this family relation with the children that helps children to develop in a better way. This is not very valued by people around in Brazil.
Mas isso tem mudado bastante nos últimos anos.
But in recent years, that has been changing.
E a maioria dos atores institucionais e também da sociedade está entendendo que o ambiente familiar é o melhor para a criança.
And most of these institutional actors and stakeholders are starting to understand how important it is for the child that they have this family connection.
Em relação aos abrigos,
and regarding the shelters,
nossa lei já diz que não deve a criança ficar institucionalizada por mais de 1 ano e meio.
Our law currently says that the child should not remain institutionalized for more than a year and a half.
Então, nesse tempo, a criança necessariamente teria que ser reintegrada à sua família, nuclear ou extensa.
So after this time, this child should be reintegrated either to their parental family or to the extended family.
Ou encaminhada para a adoção.
Or at least to be then sent for adoption.
Então, programa que acompanha e fortalece a família extensa para receber bem essa criança é bem-vindo.
So a program that will strengthen the extended family to receive a child like that is very welcome.
inclusive para as instituições de acolhimento.
Including for all of the care institutions.
Okay, well, thank you all, Ana, Angelica, Jonathan and Claudia, for all of your contributions. I'm so pleased that we were able to hear from you all by the end of the session. And also that, well, I would just say from my side that if we had longer, I would definitely listen to you for longer, because it's been really, really interesting, and I think there's a lot to learn from this context. So I hope the participants feel the same. We've come to an end of the event, but before you go, we'll ask you to complete a final poll to share some feedback with us on today's event. And we hope to see you again at another time on another topic, because we've got several events that we're planning for you. All right, thank you to you all, and we'll see you again.